Hi everyone, Jane here. Thank you for watching today. If you're new, welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Today I am working in the Dina Wakley Ledger Journal. It's a little while since I feel like I've done anything in this journal, so I'm starting off by adding some washi tape down the centre. I just like to do this just for security. This journal takes quite a bit of mediums, but I do like to just make sure, because it's a sewn journal, that I am protecting that sort of that seam down the middle. I wanted to add a little bit of colour, well, colour but not colour, into the background. So I'm adding in some of the Amsterdam matte acrylic, and it's the titanium buff light colour that I'm using. I debated whether I wanted to use gesso, but in the end this was to hand, and I watered it down a little bit so that you could still see some of that lovely text that's on the right hand side of the page. And I just wanted to create a sort of a wash, just a slight wash. Now I've got this stencil from Lavinia and it is called Glory, and I'm using a selection of colours. I wanted to try to create a sort of autumnal feeling on this page. So we've got the indigo blue peppermint tea, we've got the Amsterdam acrylic in Naples yellow red, we've got the indigo blue in warm tan, and then we've got indigo blue in leather corset. And then I decided to also add some more of the titanium buff light as well, in case I wanted to lighten anything up. So I'm using my stipply brush and I'm starting in with the warm tan. And I just wanted to sort of create a band across the middle of the pages, I should say. And I wanted a mixture. So that sort of, when all the leaves have fallen or they're falling, and they're that mix of different stages of where they've turned from green to yellow to brown, or to sometimes they're also deep red. I didn't get a deep red out, but those sorts of autumnal colours. But I wanted it to be not too in your face. I wanted it to be quite muted, which is why I chose the colours that I did. And this stencil is beautiful. It's got that sort of leafy design, but it's also got the little circles in, which I also like. So it gives that sort of light diffused effect. So I started with the lighter colours and I ended with the darkest colour, and then I just added a bit less of that because I didn't want that to overwhelm all the rest of the colours. I then decided I wanted to add a little bit of sort of that dappled light effect over the top. So I found this circle stencil. I think it was from Imagination Crafts. I'm not quite sure. It's no longer in the packaging. I haven't got the name or anything. I will list what I've used in the description box below. I won't necessarily provide links. Sometimes I put links, sometimes I don't. The reason I don't put links is because it's better for, I think, for you to just search the items for where you are in the world. Now I've got some of the Maremi Collage Books here. We have the Fungos, the Autumn Stories, and the Fairies in Bloom. And I cut these elements out in advance because I knew I wanted lots of mushrooms. I wanted to create a sort of woodlandy autumnal scene, and for me mushrooms are very much a part of that sort of autumn scene time. So I'm starting out by just laying out my elements. I had in my head that I wanted this sort of band across the middle. I like to still be able to see the text from that ledger journal page in the background, or even the lines of the ledger in the background. So I don't like to cover everything up. So I wanted this band, and I wanted it to be like as if you were looking at a scene. So what I did was I chose the items that I feel were almost the focal. So like the fairy, the biggest of the mushrooms, and the bird to be on the two outside edges. So it sort of acted as to draw your eye in from the edges in towards the centre. And I added in a pumpkin, and I know that if you look at this, and I'm saying it's a scene, in terms of proportions, it doesn't really make a lot of sense in that the pumpkin is smaller than the toadstools. But for me, it's not really relevant. I'm not trying to create a realistic scene. I'm just trying to get something that I think looks nice. So I think about which items I need to stick down first. So I have a look at how I laid them out, and if I know that there's something that is more towards the back, then I make sure that I stick that down first so that I'm not having to keep lifting bits up. Now I'm using the Liquitex Professional Matte Medium, so it acts as a collage glue. You can also use it to thin down your acrylic paints if you don't want to then thin down the colour, you just want to thin down the viscosity of them. And I add some to the back, I add some to the page, and then I also seal over the top. Now, I don't tend to worry too much about priming because generally I'm not using too many mediums afterwards. But if you were concerned that once you've put this matte medium down you wouldn't be able to use other mediums on top, you could then put a layer of transparent gesso across the top of your page just to give that sort of that primer, that primed feel back to your page. So I'm starting also by sticking the outer ones on first because they're the ones I know where I want them to be placed. So they're giving me the sort of the anchor from where I then am placing all my other elements. So that's the sort of thing I'm thinking about when I'm sticking them down. Once these were all in place, I did decide that I needed definitely to add some shading to this page. Now, I'm using the Derwent Inktense Bark colour because I felt it went best with the sort of the brown tones of this page. Now, my main area I wanted to add the shading and shadow to is the bottom of the page because I felt like it needed to ground those elements in place, but also behind where the mushrooms were, to get that feeling of the shadows from the vegetation. So I do spend quite a while. I don't think I filmed all of this, but I do film quite a bit of it because I think it is quite an important sort of stage, because the shadowing and the shading often is what takes the page from just looking like you stuck things down to actually being a cohesive sort of picture. So I have left that in, and I do go in quite a lot over the same areas in between. Once I'd stopped filming, I did actually carry on with the shading and I dried off my page. So if sometimes you're finding that it's now becoming a little bit difficult for you to add extra, take the time to just maybe dry off the layer, or allow the layers to dry for a little while and then go back in, because Inktense, once it's watered out, once it's then dried, it is a permanent medium. So you can dry it out and then add more layers on the top if you feel that you need to darken some areas still further. Even though I added all of that shading in, I still wanted it to be a bit darker in between those elements. So I've gone in with my Unipin brush pen in a sepia colour. Now, you do get, especially because I've got that matte medium down, you do get a little bit of wiggle time. Again, this is something that will dry permanent and it will dry fairly quickly. But if you put the pen down and then you dab it very quickly with your pen, you get a little bit of smudginess, because when I put the lines down, I didn't want that really firm line so much that you were getting. So I just dabbed with my finger over the top just to sort of blend it out a little bit more. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going around all the areas that I want to be just that little bit darker. I wanted now to add something into my page that connected the background to the foreground, and I often do this with stamps or stencils by adding something that is on top of your images but also then goes onto the background. I find that just joins it all together. So I'm using this little stamp from Darkroom. It's one of my favorites. It's called Grid. It's just such a simple stamp, but it really does just gives you that little bit of something. And I'm using the Archival vintage photo ink pad, and I'm just going above and below where that main sort of band of images are, just to sort of join the two sections together, and I find that this usually works really, really well. Then I did feel that because it had that autumnal sort of fairy enchanted sort of look about it, I wanted to add just some little white splatters. It always feels like it's just a little bit of dappled light, or a bit of, maybe, you know, when the little bits of pollen or seeds or anything is like floating around. So I'm using the Winsor and Newton ink, and I just covered up the faces of the main elements. I didn't want to get any ink on them. And finally, I've just got this sentiment from Out of the Autumn Stories book, which I thought just sounded beautiful. I felt it did need something around it, so I'm going back in with that Unipin pen. Do be a little bit careful. I went straight in after I'd stuck it down, and I did worry that I had actually ruined my pen, where there might have been some glue, but it was fine. And so here is my final spread. Thank you ever so much for watching today. Thank you especially to my lovely super supporters who are my members. If you're interested in my membership, I will leave a link in the description box below, and you will see a list of those beautiful supporters at the end on the little end card after this project. So thank you, and until the next time, bye bye.